think that his anti-intellectualism, Stephen A. Smith, confused that that persecution with prosecution. Like there is, you cannot compare the plight of my father, who got wrongfully arrested, went to trial, went to prison, right? That is a persecution to the plight of Donald Trump.
Shot at.
Yeah, shot. Not even shot at, shot.
Yeah.
Right. So you can't compare that. And I think that he talks loudly, and I think he comes from just a place of anti-intellectualism where he doesn't know. And I think that he's used as a conduit for white supremacy, particularly in these echo chambers. And what happens is white folk, white conservatives are able to be like, when you say dumb stuff like, you know, black people find it relatable that Donald Trump is indicted, right? Mm-hmm. First of all, it perpetuates stereotypes that we're hyper-criminalized, etc. But when you say that, white folk now look at you and be like, aha, there's even a Negro that says that too. Mm-hmm. And he's just, he's kind of a useful idiot when it comes to things like that. Mm-hmm. Now, I disagree with his sports takes all the time, right? But that is what it is. But the stakes are too high for that level of ignorance. And so, and Jason Whitlock is a different animal. I think Jason Whitlock, Ice Cube, Stephen A. Smith are all in different lanes. I don't want people to think they're the same, but I do think they contribute to an erosion of our culture and particularly the success thereof.
Let's have that conversation. Let's have it. That's the voice of Bakari Sellers on a show that specializes in anti-intellectualism. We are here. It's the Karen Hunter Show. We're here. Olivia A. Cole is here. Bakari Sellers has a new book called The Moment. You delivered that. I wonder if the tongue was in cheek and if they knew that you were actually talking about them as well, or were you Bakari Sellers?
I wasn't, to be honest with you. And the reason I wasn't is because I think there's a difference between coming from a place of inquiry. You know, the results may end up being the same, but a place of inquiry and a place of being white adjacent. I think Stephen A. Smith to be white adjacent, right? And I think he firmly plants himself looking for the adoration. And by the way, this is an opinion and you can disagree with that, but he looks for the adoration of Tucker's and he looks for the adoration of Sean Hannity's. The reason I don't put Charlamagne in that category, DJ Envy in that category, is because they come from a place of inquiry. Now, you may say that inquisitiveness leads to ignorance, and that's fine. You may say that their platform is one that they should be more cautious with, and I hear you. But I was very clear in denoting that I believe there to be a difference. And the results end up being the same. And you may say, Bakari, it's still detrimental. But I know Charlamagne extremely well, and Charlamagne is usually, he's not out to inflict harm or damage, although he recognizes sometimes after introspection, after things are said, that may be the result. Instead, he's literally coming from a place of, I want to know more. And
okay, let me just say, being inquisitive without having done the tertiary work to know things, right? I ask questions for a living, right? But I ask questions knowing things. I ask questions having read some things. I ask questions with a body of work that comes with me when I come. So just anybody, a 2-year-old can ask questions, but do you take a 2-year-old's question asking as seriously as you do somebody that actually has the chops to do it? And the larger question is, why does that person have a platform to ask those questions of a president or a vice president or whatever? There seems to be an unseriousness with the way in which our process is exact. When I say our, I mean Black people. You know, there are media folk out there. You know, I had Charlene Hunter Galt on the show last year, and it was love. You know what I'm saying?
One
like
of the most powerful women that does not get the post that she deserves, or the
come on. Yeah, I'm saying Gwen Eiffel. Like we have people that have depth, but this is unserious. You know.
So then my response would be like I was integral in landing him the Hillary Clinton interview. I was the first political interview that was done on the Breakfast Club. This was funny. They were doing Black History Month heroes back in 2014. And Charlamagne was like, why don't you come up and talk about your run for lieutenant governor? And so the first person they actually talked politics to was me. And so as we were going through this process, they began to have more people come on the show. And it's this interesting cross-section. And this is something we have to think about. Hillary Clinton came on the show because she wanted to meet voters where they were. It's the #1 urban show in the country, right? Urban radio show. I think that's the category. You probably know more about these categories than I. So if I'm speaking inappropriately, I apologize. but it's the number one urban radio show in the world. It has the most syndicated markets, et cetera. And so Hillary Clinton, Madam Secretary, wanted to come and meet voters where they were. And so that is how this cascaded into presidential candidates come through, and one after the other, Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden and all of these things. It became a norm for individuals to go through that in an effort to talk to Black voters on a platform that otherwise would be missed. And so for better or worse, it's become this animal that either you love or you hate.
So it's your fault. Okay. Now I know where I need to direct my ire.
First send me the edible arrangements with extra melon, and then you can blame it on me.
Oh, Olivier Cole is here. Bakari Sellers. As you're talking, you meet voters where they are. I've had this conversation with folk off mic, of course, as well as on mic, because there's no difference between how I talk on mic and off mic. But you think about meeting an audience. Two things are true. You can actually, by going on other platforms, I'm looking at, like, before there was Joe Rogan was just some guy, hosting a show where people were eating, spiders and going into places with snakes and then hosting UFC things, right? And being an announcer there. You can help emerge somebody. Do you know what I'm saying? By going to a place that maybe there's low information voters, maybe there's not a whole lot of depth in conversations about these things, and then asking about some hot sauce and some pocketbook, doesn't elevate the conversation. It feels like pandering, right? Because sitting down with
that was my
Cardi
biggest,
B.
That was one of my biggest like misgivings about that interview, is that Hillary Clinton, for her entire life since she was First Lady of Arkansas, keeps hot sauce in her purse. And we just assumed, because of the climate that we're in, that the most talented person to ever run for president of the United States is Hillary Rodham Clinton. And we just assumed that she was pandering because it just sounds like that in the venue that it was in, when in all honesty, she was being unvarnished and being herself, because those of us who spend time with her know that if you at a restaurant with Hillary Clinton, she gonna bring hot sauce out. And it ain't because you there, it's because she's from Arkansas.
So Bakari Sellers asking that question lands differently, because there's a relationship there. You understand? You know what I'm saying? Like, that would have been a moment, right? As opposed to the vice president talking about smoking weed to Snoop. It doesn't come off the same because of the person in which the person is asking a question. I'm not making a case in either way, but as you talk about this, too much at stake right now, to have any voices out there undermining what will be the undermining of all of our democracy, all of our rights. I don't know what we're going to do.
Can I ask both of you all a question? I know this ain't my show, but let me just ask this question.
No, come on through.
Because one of the things that I've been a little bit disturbed with the White House is this threat to democracy, because I believe that you, Miss Karen, Miss Olivia, and myself would all ascribe to the notion that democracy is at stake in the next election. The difference, though, is that when I'm in the barbershop, grocery store, talking to young people, at the jails, talking to my clients, group chats with folk who may not be as sophisticated as we may be, or politically, they may be more sophisticated, but not as politically in the know. I've never heard them say, oh my God, I got to go out here and vote because democracy is at stake. They're talking about other things that move them. And so my question is, are we approaching this the right way when we go down that path and meet people where they are? Or are we missing the mark with the individuals who make our world go, like the sanitation workers, the truck drivers, the people who deliver our mail, the teachers who get to school at 6 and get off at 5? Are we missing the mark with them with this? Or how should we have these conversations?
That's a great question.
I think it is a great question. I think that, I should say no. Yes, we are missing the mark. I think that we, at least my generation and the generations after, have been so used to impending apocalypse that it's like, the future's at stake. Here we go. Okay. Yeah. I haven't heard that a million times before. Like, I'm very used to the impending apocalypse. Thank you very much. Especially young people. When I think about the young people in my classrooms, high schoolers, I was just with a group of high schoolers. It was in Lexington, Kentucky, like 2 weeks ago. And they're like, Yeah, apocalypse, whoop-de-doo. They're like, when are we going to talk about college? When are we going to talk about health insurance? When are we going to talk about my dad's mental health? When are we going to talk about my grandmother getting the medicine that she needs? Apocalypse doesn't scare them as much as the day-to-day. And we said this at the beginning of the show, when it comes to the young people rallying for Palestine, it's like, you don't have anything left to take from us. This generation has no future the way they see it. There's the school shootings, there's the forest fires, there's this huge tornado that just killed a bunch of people in Oklahoma. It's like, I've got bigger fish to fry than the apocalypse. What does that mean? What does that really mean when the apocalypse is less scary, political apocalypse, of course, than the day to day. So I agree. I think that it's the wrong approach.
Bakari, you hit on something. And why aren't they listening, though? To your point, I think messaging was off in 2020. If we didn't have, Trump as the biggest threat.
Exactly.
Biden wasn't most of our first or second choice. Only Smtih had him at number one on his bingo card. He was not mine. We voted not because of, we weren't inspired to vote. We voted that same thing. And then somebody would say, well, what happened under Trump? We didn't die, so we could do this again, but I feel like as people who've studied history a little bit, what that's going to look like. And Project 2025 is right there. A 1,000-page manifesto telling you exactly what they're going to do. And I don't know how else to have this conversation, but you've hit on something. I think you're absolutely right. No, this messaging is wrong.
I would push back on one premise to say Joe Biden wasn't your first choice. I mean, there are I said Joe Biden was elected by my mama and her friends. There's a certain demographic of
that where it was their first choice.
A black voter who was like, look.
I said he wasn't mine. I'm talking about Karen Hunter.
Yeah. No, but there's a certain demographic of black folk who determined the Democratic nominee, and they were like, no to Elizabeth Warren, no to whomever else. They were like, this Joe Biden, and I'm gonna tell you who those voters are. It's my mama and her friends. They in the group chat. They wake up every day, get dressed, ain't got nowhere to go. They play bid whiz and all that stuff, and they can tell you everything going on in the community. That's kind of first. But second, about messaging and where we are right now, it's frustrating to me because usually the only time I put Trump in and Biden in the same sentence is when I'm articulating the fact that they both missed the mark with one thing. They both have a tendency to live in the past. They live in the past for two different reasons, right? Donald Trump lives in the past because he's a conduit for white grievance, and he wants to sit in that grievance. Joe Biden has this unique nostalgia for yesteryear. He always wants to talk about 1960 and growing up in Delaware and all this other stuff. And it's just, But by doing that, they handicap themselves because neither one of them really aspire to give us a vision for what the future looks like. And I don't know if that is, and I'm not trying to be ageist at all. I don't know if that is kind of a characteristic that comes with being 83 years old, because I honestly don't know if there's a such thing as an 83-year-old visionary. But I do know that if Donald Trump wants to be president, if Joe Biden wants to be president of the United States, he may have to be the first 83-year-old visionary we've had in this country. And that is what we're missing. Like Sadie and Stokely are 5. And Joe Biden has to sit in a room with the people who are around him and say, look, we have to be willing to give Sadie and Stokely a vision for the future, even if I won't be here.